Welcome to Cook Like a Man. Why am I talking like that? I don't even talk like that. Because it's manly. Now, in all seriousness, I'm not talking about that misogynistic, toxic masculinity. That's not what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is being a better man. Being able to cook for yourself, your family, your friends. And look, maybe it was a cultural thing. Maybe the men in the house didn't cook. And so you didn't think it was a done thing. But now you might be moving out of home, you might have a partner, you might have a young family. And now you're like, oh shit, bro, I don't know how to cook, eh? Now I don't know why the guy in my head is Kiwi, but that's what I hear in my head. And ladies, this show is as much for you as it is for the guys, but let's be honest, guys need a lot more help. And nothing would give me more pleasure than your partner coming up to you and was like, honey, just been watching Cook Like a Man and you just sit there, I'm gonna cook up a feed. That would be the biggest compliment. So let's get started. Steak and chips. Now, before we can cook our steaks, we need to get our potatoes ready and cut them into fries. So I'm just going to go ahead and do that. And the first step is to boil them. So we're going to boil it only for about 5 minutes just to take away that softness. And then after that, we fry them. We fry them until they get a little bit of a skin. And then after that, we re-cook them again and they get super, super crunchy. And it's all about timing. We don't want cold fries with our steak. We want everything to be hot at the same time. Now, while my potatoes are boiling, I'm prepping the barbecue. I've got a 2-zone fire going. What that means is that on one side I've got the fire, the other side I've got nothing, and that'll become, the reason for that will become apparent once I get cooking. And what you want is all that charcoal to turn white, and then you know it's ready. The way you know that your barbecue is ready and that it's not too hot is you put your hand there, and if you can hold it there for 6 seconds, you know it's ready to cook and it's not going to burn the meat. So I'm going to go ahead and count that. 1, 2, 3, 4. No, still too hot. So I'm going to leave it there until that's ready. Now I'm just going to be taking these chips off the boil now. They're ready to go, so we'll just drain the water out of that. And now we're going to get this oil nice and hot, put the chips in. Now I did have to move the gas cooker because it was just way too windy out the front and the oil just wasn't getting hot. But now, as we can see, it's frying up quite nicely. You can see a skin forming, and that's what we're looking for. So I'm just going to give it a couple of more minutes, and then we'll take these off and we'll start cooking the meat. Before we get started, I want to talk about grass-fed and grain-fed. What are the difference? As you can see, this is grass-fed and it's much leaner and you have a yellowing of the fat, and this is grain-fed, and as you can see it's much fattier, and also the fat tends to be a lot whiter as well. Okay, now we've got the fries. They're just drying out at the moment, so we've done the first fry. We're going to wait to do the second fry. These can cool down. Now the first thing we're going to do it with the steak is just put a little bit of oil on it, and what that actually does is help render the fat so it starts cooking very quickly. So just a little bit of oil, rub it in both sides. Might need a little bit more. Now one thing that I see a lot of people do, which is just wrong, you don't salt the meat before you put it on, because if you salt the meat, what's actually going to happen is going to suck out the moisture, and if it does that, it's going to be chewy, it's going to be dry. So once it's sealed, then we put the salt on, and I'll show you that. So I'm going to cut my ugly mug out now, and I'm going to show you how we're going to cook this meat. Okay, what I've got, I'm just using my phone as a timer, and what I'm going to do is 1.5 minutes on each side, but twice, and then we're going to get that crisscross effect happening. So let me just get into my clock. Alright, so I'm going to go for 1.5 minutes on each side. Now as you can see, we're starting to get those lines through there. Now I put the salt on, because now it's actually going to get drawn into the meat rather than draw out the moisture. It's been 3 minutes. Now I'm actually going to flip it the other way so we get the cross lines on there, just like that. The fire's probably a little bit too hot, but it'll be fine. There we go. Put it on that side. So all in all, 6 minutes all up, and then we let it rest on the side with no fire, just for about 5 minutes, depending on how you like it cooked, because we don't want it to burn. We don't want the outside to be all black and then the inside not cooked. So once it's nicely cooked on the outside, we just bring it to this side and then we let it cook all the way through. That's looking good. Now, what I do, just put the lid on, and now we just wait. Now while that is cooking, we are going to go back and cook up the fries. Oh, and one thing, when we put the salt on, we want a little bit of that hot oil on there, so when the salt goes on, it just gets sucked into the chip. If you do it while it's dry, the salt just bounces off and yeah, it's not as good. So you actually want some of that hot oil on there while you're salting it. Alright, now you see how all the bubbles have stopped and it's all floating. Now we know it is time to get all these chips out, and then we'll put the salt on there just while it's nice and hot. Oh mate, I can tell you these are going to be crunchy as hell. Alright, now let's take that off the fire. Switch that off and bring it back over here. So while it's hot, a little bit of salt on there. There we go. Oh. So good. All right, we I'm going to plate up, get all this ready. Ow. Let's get this meat out. Oh mate, move this. So now what we're going to do, we're going to let the meat rest just for about 10 minutes, just so all that moisture doesn't rush out when we cut into it. We want it to slowly cool down a little bit on the inside, and that moisture just stays in the meat rather than comes out. What I'm actually going to do is plate up my chips. Get these. Oh, I don't know if you can hear that, but that, my friend, is crunchy. Now, one thing that I'm going to do is probably take a couple of photos. All right, it's time to cut into the meat and see how we did. Oh, super tender. Did I cook it perfectly to my liking? Oh, perfect. Perfect. But how does it taste? No. Oh. Look, I'm not saying you're going to get laid if you make this, but your chances probably gone up by about 100%. Unless you're married or you got kids, let's be honest, you ain't getting shit. But it's all about being a better man, being able to cook for yourself, your family, and she's gonna love you for it. So go out, earn those man cards, and we'll see you next week. One last thing, peace out. I just want to show you how crunchy these triple cooked fries are. No. Mate, honestly, once you've gone triple cooked, you just don't go back.